Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Today's talk is around API standards in smart cities and what's the impact of the adoption of an open platform to the end citizen, so anybody like you and me. Let me first introduce myself real quickly. I'm Luca Ferrari. I'm Italian, but I live in Barcelona. And most recently, I've been working in Red Hat in the last 6 years, and specifically in edge computing. So this is the background I've chosen for all the slides. Maybe you recognize this. This is SimCity. I used to play this game a lot. And so that you know, it's 20 years old. So that's how old we all are. And I think it's an interesting reference back in the time because it showed us how difficult and complex it was to manage a city, how citizens became unhappy with changes and how hard it was to plan the zoning of a city. So this is just an example of the challenges that are coming to the cities. So as we all know, the percentage of population moving to the cities increasing every year. So it's projected to be more than 60% by the year 2050. And of course, with this type of urbanization, it comes other challenges. So the percentage of greenhouse gas emitted by cities is 80% right now. The energy consumption is around 70%. And the generated waste, which is also something affecting us on a daily basis, is more than 70%. So what does it all mean and where are we going with this? So clearly, there is pressure from all of us as citizens on the infrastructure. So there is added pressure, and in some cases, it's even temporary pressure. So in the case of Barcelona, we have high season with a huge amount of tourists affecting the same infrastructure like underground. Then we have the pressure or the impact of digitalization, which is affecting all of us. We expect to be able to perform any activity nowadays through the interface of a smartphone. So we would expect to be able to do the same with the city, whether it's paying for bills or asking for a specific document. And there is the pressure from the environment. Clearly, we're all impacted by climate change. I'm Italian, as you might have seen in the last weeks. There has been a huge flood in north and central Italy, effect of climate change. And one of the responses to this is actually increasing energy efficiency. This is on the roadmap for, or should be on the roadmap for all the cities. And finally, there is the evolution and innovation around infrastructure. So this is not necessarily linked to the city itself. So a lot of, for example, transportation systems are private nowadays. So the city has to cope also with this different speed in terms of innovation. So this all calls from a smarter urban system. So I don't really particularly like the smart terms because it can mean a lot and at the same time nothing. What I really prefer is to compare the view of the traditional city maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago, to the new view of the city. So traditionally, we had this layer of concrete, as you can see in gray, infrastructure of literally metal. And then there was this level where citizen or users, as you might see it, interacted with services provided by the city. So nowadays, really, digitalization has impacted a lot of aspects of our city life, and it's become really the glue between the services provided and the infrastructure. So at the same time, it's also really enhancing these services by letting them access more and more data related to infrastructure. And this really generates a feedback loop where the citizen can not only use these services, but also optimize them and provide feedback in real time to the usage of these services. The term smart city has come of age. I would say nowadays is maybe 10 to 15 years old. So we are already sort of through the disillusionment. But there are certain aspects that are becoming more and more important in this evolution of technology, like digital twins, which is coming of age. It is important to model the infrastructure of the city without making any real change. So this is also important to predict possible failure or congestion in the city. Let's see how that goes in the future. Edge, which I actually come from, is also important because, for example, you want to elaborate and all the data generated locally, for example, in the neighborhood, without having to rely on cloud computing. 5G that we all know about, it also enables certain scenario in the smart city situation, like vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, and even the famous 5G connected ambulance scenario. But really, where smart city is now shining in terms of the concept that everybody can touch is we are now seeing more and more unified information model across the city. So this is already impacting us. I can speak from my personal experience, like the health system communicating with the tax system and the document system across the city. And this is already, I would say, showing some real efficiency. But of course, there is more to come. So if we think about some of the major aspects impacting us through the life as citizen, the first one that comes to mind is transportation, for sure. And we've seen some really great innovation recently, like e-hauling. Think about Uber, or what I was speaking about before, vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure. So the possibility of seeing contextual information in your car while driving through the city. And eventually we might come to the mobility as a service scenario where you literally can haul any type of service based on just source and destination, whether it's public or private, and even with additional information like CO2 generated while using that transportation mode. In terms of energy, most of us, I would say, are now experienced with smart meters. So they could be smarter. So we have to think that in the future, our building might have solar panels, if they don't already, or small wind turbines. So we need to make sure that the grid, the energy grid, gets smarter so that it can welcome intermittent source of energy, and that it can also vary automatically price of energy consumed by local homes. Then water. This is something that maybe is not really implemented yet, but it's going to come in the near future. Is in Italy, for example, we have a big issue with leakage of water. There are nowadays systems that detects automatically the leakage of pipes. And at the same time, they can also improve and diagnose water quality in real time. Building is a huge part of the city life. If you think about it, at the end of the day, we spend between work and home basically most of our time inside a building, whether it's a 3-story office building or your single home, it doesn't matter. There's a whole bunch of problems that need to be solved in terms of optimizing, for example, the usage of air conditioning, detecting the presence of people to optimize the usage of light and air conditioning and heating. And even some advanced buildings nowadays can also predict traffic across the different floors and schedule the lifts accordingly. And eventually we come to waste. So there's not much innovation going on in this field, unluckily, because this is a problem that's affecting each one of us. But we've seen companies optimizing, for example, the route of waste truck, garbage trucks. And potentially in the future, we can even classify automatically waste based on sensors. So all of this is in some ways already around us, or is going to come in the next 5 to 10 years. But there are certain challenges associated to adopting this type of innovative services. So if you are a urban manager, urban planner, or citizen, for sure, one of the biggest issues is the digital divide. So we need to think that not everybody is used to using a computer every day or a smartphone and can access these new services using these platforms. Some other problem, if we think about application developers or the system architects that will integrate all of this, we need to make sure that we're adopting open data standards and open data models to make sure that I can, for example, develop a new service based on several sensors and other type of services in an easy way. And I also need to make sure that the data I'm exposing to developers is associated with good metadata and it's pre-formatted. And then eventually that's where the smart part comes. So I want data scientists and data engineers to work on the optimization and prediction part, right? So I want to make sure that data is especially accurate, is transparent, and is real, represent real scenarios. So we need to, when we want to implement a smart city platform, we really need to implement something that's inclusive, secure, cost-effective. It is loved by citizens, but at the same time, we need to think that the end user, like me or you, in the end, just see, for example, an energy system as something that's needed to like refresh your beer and have a hot shower. So it should also be hidden. It shouldn't add complexity. That's why I think open source has a greater advantage compared to other approaches. So first of all, it's associated with an open organization. So you can see how a city governance and planning organization can literally have a holistic view across all new services and all the infrastructure because of the adoption of an open source approach, and can also collaborate with external entity in an easier way. You have also an open data model, which allows you to cross-reference indicators, sensor measurement, and data. And this allows you, for example, to generate innovative services. Like in Barcelona, we have now a system which can predict where there's going to be parking in certain area of the city based on past history of traffic and parking availability. And then you want to generate really an API economy around this open data, so that app developer will come and will generate new services for your marketplace. If you think about city, the single city as a single marketplace, you want to make sure to generate enough interest so that it's a self-sustaining system. So ideally, if you think about a platform like that, you would think about something like this in this definition. And by chance, this is also the mission of FIWARE. So FIWARE is an open foundation, and it also provides an open platform to manage several aspects of smart cities, not limited to smart cities. It can also be applied to smart agriculture, smart manufacturing, and other aspects of the digital world. And it provides, as I said, a framework of an open source platform with components that are all exposing open APIs. It is also providing a standard for the exchange of context information. So this standard allows for the integration of several service interfaces. And the core component here is actually the core context management. So the context broker, this is where the messages of the platform are routed, and where they are exposed to external parties as well. As you can see here, it has also a whole set of interfaces for IoT, robotics, and other third-party systems, which is super important if you want to adopt this platform across the world. And eventually, Red Hat also collaborated in this effort. So the main issue FIWARE had was an easy way to actually deploy this and to manage this. If you think about your typical city, it doesn't have a huge IT team. It doesn't have definitely DevOps dedicated team. And the security team might be very scarce. So by the addition of DevOps-oriented platform based on containers, this made the whole FIWARE platform easier to deploy and to scale, fully secure, and still completely open source and API driven. So this translated in several installations across the world. I believe, if I remember right, that more than 90 cities in the world are now adopting, in part, components of the FIWARE platform. And we can see an example here. I mean, I picked Perugia because I'm Italian, and also I really like the city. It is the city of a university, an important university for foreign students that also come to Italy to learn Italian. And it has a really specific issue, which is it it has one of the largest territorial area associated with relatively small population. What does this mean is that it has very little budget dedicated to IT and I just say IoT as well, but a huge area to cover. And that's why they adopted an IoT approach first, but it was partly failing in the past because these IoT sensors were not really connected to anything manageable, I just say. So they started with this project of the Wisetown platform, which adopts part of the FIWARE standard. As you can see here, they are tagged in the diagram. Importantly, the context broker is here, which manages all the communication with external agent. And the other important element is that adopting the FIWARE platform allowed them to reuse the IoT agents that were already available out there, the data that was generated already out there. And it's also added through the Wisetown platform the geographical aspect, which is super important in terms of metadata. This translated into application like this one, the issue and task manager. So the citizen can be actually the one opening issue related to the city. And these issues translate into tasks that are assigned to the municipality and to the different departments. So for example, a typical example in Italy is when you have bumpy asphalt because of root of a plant. This also translated into, for example, detecting in real time water supply issue through a dashboard like this one. So in the end, when it comes to adopting a smart city platform, you can go one way or the other. So you can go democratic and open, or have the view and the strategy of some of the Chinese cities, which for sure are very innovative and smart, but have a highly controlled view of the citizen. You can go bottom up or top down. That's one approach some cities have followed, where they actually adopted a closed platform from one technology vendor, and they expected citizens and developers to actually start flocking to the platform when that really didn't happen. You can build whole new cities in the desert, literally, like in the case of Masdar in UAE, which was supposed to be smartest city out there, but that's really utopia sometimes. So most of the time, most of the citizens are already living in the city, and they want to see changes with the current infrastructure. So through retrofitting and integrating current system. And the same goes with whether you see data as an actual good to be sold by citizens themselves, to be sent around and to be used by app developers, or just as a platform. And eventually, this leads to whether you see your citizen as just another paying user with a credit card number, or whether you see it as also a producer besides being a consumer, and eventually, in an open source mind, as a contributor and enhancer of your platform. Thank you.